Hi, this is my video review for Accursed. Accursed is a horror setting for the Savage Worlds RPG. It should be played with the horror companion. You can certainly play it without it, but I recommend that you get the horror companion anyway, because a lot of the information in there works really well with this setting and enhances the setting overall. Well, let me talk about the PDF first. The PDF is excellent because it comes with a full color map of Morden, the world where the game takes place, and it comes with a digital character sheet, so you can input the information for your character for those online games, or if you like playing with a tablet at the gaming table. And the book is easy to navigate. It comes with a digital table of contents and hyperlinks, and the art is excellent. I will show you a few of the art pieces, and it has a good structure for teaching the player about the setting and the new rules. Well, let's jump into it. First of all, the land of Morden is a land ravaged by war, by supernatural war. The world takes place in another planet. It doesn't take place on planet Earth. It takes place in a darker version of our world, and everything was going somewhat smoothly until the witches and their evil armies arrived from beyond the mountains, and the witches started attacking and killing humans and turning them into horrifying beasts like vampires and ghosts and all kinds of creatures of the night. And during that war, which is called the Bane War, the humans managed to get a bit of an advantage over the witches by dealing a seemingly lethal blow to one of them, and this is more like like they won a battle but not the war, and they brought the conflict to a standstill, to a point where neither the witches nor the human side is exactly certain of the next course of action. It was a pretty shocking blow that they dealt to the witches, but they are not powerless. They are still scheming and preparing to take over the entire world. And so the players control the Accursed. The Accursed are humans that, even though they were transformed into monsters, because of a powerful sense of justice or identity, they managed to take control of their monstrous bodies and fight for the greater good. And this colors the world with a very heroic theme, because at first you could probably think this is kind of like Ravenloft in a dark world dominated by kind of demigods that enslave people, but the characters in this game really have a fighting chance, because not only are they really heroic, they have pretty awesome powers as well to back up the claim. There are several Accursed, so the players can choose the kind of monster they would like to play. First of all, we have the Vampire. The Vampire, as many of you know, is half vampire, half human creature, and the Vampire is more suited for stealth and diplomacy or charm related missions, because it's a pretty agile character with lots of dexterity and also supernatural abilities to manipulate or control others through charm and deception. The weakness of the Vampire is that wooden weapons do a lot of damage. This is related, of course, to the wooden stake. And the Vampire can also enhance some of its powers or stats by burning blood, or kind of like Vampire the Masquerade. The Vampire enters a blood rage to enhance its physical prowess. Here is an illustration of the Vampire. And next we have the Golem, and the Golem, as you probably expect, it's a huge hulking creature, pretty strong, tough, and resilient. It probably works more like a frontline combatant, but it's a pretty slow and clumsy character overall. You need to balance all that brute strength with something, and that's the thing about the Golem. But the cool thing also about the Golem is that it can control its limbs even if they are detached from its body. For example, if the golem rips his arm off. The arm can crawl around with the help of the fingers and enter some places. Maybe the golem could even take himself apart completely and ship himself to another place without the enemy noticing. And well, here's an illustration of the golem, kind of like an intellectual type. The golems can be made like the Frankenstein monster out of human body parts, or also out of straw, metal, many other types of materials. And the weakness of the golem is that, according to the material it's made of, it's vulnerable to certain things, for example fire or maybe blunt weapons. Next we have the mongrels. The mongrels are kind of like crazy experiments, kind of like the Frankenstein monster, but it's stitched together with animal parts. We have an illustration here. As you can see, the art in this book is pretty excellent. It's top notch. And the mongrel, according to the animal parts that he has on the body, he can maybe has a superhuman strength, or enhanced agility, or maybe a poisonous sting, or maybe a scorpion tail was attached to it, and he has that little weapon. And the weakness of the mongrel is that he's always in pain and needs an elixir of sorts to keep control over his mind, of his the human part of himself. And the mummies are, as you can expect, a typical Egyptian mummy, but here's the cool part. The mummy is made an armor out of his or her sarcophagus. So this is like a walking a mummy covered with a powerful protective shell that can also be transformed into different things. The mummy could build a boat, or maybe some other kind of tool by using the parts of his sarcophagus. Here we have an illustration of a mummy character. And the weakness of the mummy is that behind that mask, that pharaonic mask, there is a really ugly face. So the mummy suffers a lot of charisma penalties. And let's see, we have the Ophidians. They're kind of like snake men. You can see them right here. And they are equipped with a very poisonous bite and a very agile body, and also they are capable of constricting their enemies. And the weakness is that they are cold-blooded, so if they are in a cold weather, they will probably suffer a lot. We also have the Revenants. The Revenants seem like superpowered zombies, quite resilient. We have an illustration here. Quite resilient like the golem, but they also are a bit more agile. Maybe not as strong and as a frontline combatant, but their agility makes up for that. And their weakness is that they are consumed by an obsession, like getting revenge on something. And if they are not doing something related to that revenge or obsession, they start becoming fatigued and are less effective overall. We also have the Shades. As you can see them right here, they are kind of like ghosts, not exactly completely ghosts, because they have materialized, and they have all the advantages one would expect from a ghostly being, that they can go through objects, and they are also quite skilled in using sorcery or witchcraft. And however, they have the weakness that because of they have a limited presence, they are not very strong. They spend a lot of advances trying to get stronger. And we also have the Barger. The Barger are kind of like lycanthropes or werewolves that will become stronger by transforming into a werebeast, or a sort of werewolf or werebear. However, they are very vulnerable to silver during these transformations, so they become incredibly strong and tough, but if the enemy is armed with silver weapons, they will suffer a lot of damage. The interesting thing about these characters is that it represents the struggle of these monstrous beings that still remember a small part of their human lives, and they're trying to keep a human conscience while fighting the darkness, fighting evil. And so there are a lot of interesting role-playing opportunities, because this game is not only about fighting the witches, but it's also about dealing with the conflict or drama that the character is human, but is also a monster. And these monsters are also rejected by many of the humans they seek to protect. There's also a sort of a religion or church or philosophy permeating the setting known as Enochian, and they built an order called the Order of the Penitent, and the Accursed that belong to this order work towards the destruction of the witches and the restoration of the world, because this setting is modeled after a lot of real world cultures and places, but it also reflects a specific period, like a Renaissance period, but in a very dark light. Picture it as an underworld or Castlevania type of setting. And because of the interesting rules in this game, you can play it as a very action-packed game. Because of all the incredible powers and special traits of the characters, it feels more like action horror more than horror. And you also have holy powers and alchemy and witchcraft, which are specifically tailored for this setting, and with their own properties and procedures. You also have the tools and gear with different weapons and gear and objects for this specific planet and timeline. And there's also a chapter talking about the witch marks. Witch marks are kind of like what you could call them tattoos or marks in the bodies of the accursed, and they represent the power of the accursed and the type of the accursed. And as the accursed grows in power and develops, these witch marks also change, becoming more complex. Also another interesting thing is that all these accursed are related to a specific witch. So the golems were created by one witch, the mummies by another, the Ophidians by another witch, and they are all related to this witch one way or another in a very antagonistic way, but also it creates a lot of friction. For example, if the Ophidians were created by the Gorgon, and the Gorgon will have a sort of love-hate relationship with them. And if the Ophidian or a particular Ophidian becomes too much of a threat, the Gorgon will send all her minions specifically after the Gorgon. Ignore the golems, ignore the mummies, attack attack the Ophidian. So each type of accursed is targeted by a specific witch, the witch that created them. And the book also has an entire plot point campaign, so you can introduce your characters to this exciting world, and by the end of it they may end up changing the history of the Accursed campaign setting. I don't want to give too much spoilers about this, but it involves one of the witches in a very surprising way. And well, what do I think about this book overall? I think it's an excellent setting. It's a pretty good setting, because when I first read the Horror Companion, I had all these ideas running in my head of how one could run a campaign with a party composed of golems and have vampires and ghosts. And this setting gives you a coherent way, so you can play as that crazy party composed of many different types of monsters. Oh, and I forgot this other thing. This is very interesting. The accursed can reject or accept their monstrous form or essence. So, for example, if an accursed accepts its curse, it will enhance its strengths, but the weakness will grow even larger. If something hurt you before, for example, wooden weapons for the vampire, it will cause a lot more damage if you accept the curse of the vampire. But they can also defy the curse. When an accursed defies the curse or his condition, he starts becoming human, and that reminds me a bit of Vampire the Masquerade, when a vampire could choose to follow the path of Gehenna, I think it was called, where I don't remember exactly, but the vampire could start to become somewhat human and reject its bestial impulses. So this is another interesting part of the setting, because the character can choose to accept the his monstrous nature, or try to regain that lost humanity. And even if the character becomes human again, not all powers are lost. One would think, oh, that sucks, all of my awesome monster abilities are going to be lost in that process. But no, the character retains some of the abilities, if not most of them. Oh, I'm sorry, the vampire gets more vulnerable to sunlight. So if the vampire accepts the curse, it becomes more and more vulnerable to sunlight, in contrast to the strength and power of the vampire. And so I recommend this setting. Obviously, I don't recommend it for people who don't like horror, but for those who love horror and action like me, I think it's a must-have, especially if you have the horror companion. Well, and also it gives you that vibe of that struggle against an evil world and against the darker part of ourselves. So it gets really dramatic, and it balances out pretty nicely with the action, fighting against all those monsters and creatures. And the chapters, there are so many cool things about this book, I keep forgetting about them. There's a chapter about the entire witch cove and everything about the witches, who they are, the mindset of each one of the witches, the plots, the types of monsters they create. So you have lots of adventure seats spread out throughout the entire book, and you should get this book. Trust me, you like horror, you like Savage Worlds, and you like action, get it. Well, thanks for watching my review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please type them down. I will read them. See you later.